were you tall?
This is Fennessy's Funeral Directors, 1 Kickham Street, Clonmel, County Tipperary.
And have you always worked in this industry?
Not well, yes and no. My grandfather started the business in the 1900s. I believe it was 1902. And then his son took over, Arthur Fennessy, and he ran the business for years with his brother Georgie and all the other brothers as well. He used to help out from time to time. I was a nephew. And then some years ago, I used to help out at weekends, and if I was on holidays, they might look for drivers, and I was always interested in the business. And I was kind of coming and going here. I was actually reared here, being honest about it, as a young boy. And in 1986, I think it was, my uncle Artie died, passed away, and his wife was running it, and I was helping her to run the business. But in 1988, she decided to opt out, so she put it to the family as to who would be interested in taking over the business. And I suppose from the word go, she was hoping that I would take it because I knew what was going on. So I came in here in October 88, and it wasn't easy for a few months, naturally enough. And then we got too big too quick because I went into the chauffeuring business as well. Now, my uncles used to do hackney business, which we kept on, but we changed it from hackney to chauffeur. And I was asked to join the Irish Chauffeur Association, CDA, which I did, and we got it up. It was actually defunct at that stage, so we got up and running again. So I'm involved in that, and we look after in the chauffeuring business. We do an awful lot of corporate work, including state visits and semi-state visits. And we were actually involved even in the papal visit. So things like that, and locally as well, of course. And I was lucky enough to meet 2 American presidents in my time, plus the Beijing, and people like that.
And the room where we're sitting now, you told me this was the coach house.
This used to be the coach house where my grandfather used to keep the horse-drawn hearses. But there's another place over the road there, it's now gone. He used to keep some of the sidecars over there. And yes, around here, and there used to be a big gate over there. Of course, the road wasn't as narrow as what it is now. But yeah, so then my auntie, the Artie's wife, decided to change it into a funeral home.
And tell me this, when did the funeral home begin?
Would you believe, I'm not too sure. I think it was 1986 or thereabouts.
And before that, what happened? Where did people be brought for removal?
Mostly from the houses. So, which it is kind of sometimes now it's even going back to houses nowadays. Again, people like to go from the houses, and we just make sure that it's easy accessible in and out, and that everything will be above board. People tell us that we're very particular, but that's us. It's easier to fix the stick before it's broke, and things like that. So we're very fussy. People might not like what we say or do, but at the end of the day, they'd always say to you, Anthony, you were right. You've done it the right way. As I said to them, it's easier to do it right than to do it wrong.
And before that, people would have been waked in their houses?
Yes.
And do you remember that in the early days?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do.
And what kind of challenges would that throw up for you, in the past anyway, with wakes in the homes?
In the past, well, I was basically only helping my uncles, really, the lifting and setting up things, but nothing in the driving end at that stage. That's all I would know about that end of it.
And do you ever remember years ago going to houses where a coffin had to be taken out a window or?
Yes, and sometimes you might have to take out a window to get in a coffin. You know, but even sometimes, at the moment, sometimes you might have to do it as well when people are adamant that they want the remains back in the house. But as I said, we always make sure that it's easy accessible in and out without the minimum of disruption to the family and to ourselves, and more importantly to the remains.
And tell me this, before the funeral home, do you remember the horse-drawn hearses?
Vaguely, being honest about it, vaguely. When my grandfather, my uncle got the motorised hearse, I think it was a Dodge, I think he bought, and a cousin of mine, they used to park the hearse over, there used to be a garage over their yard over there, and used to keep the hearse over there, and eventually used to move the horse-drawn hearses over there as well. But I always remember my uncle, he'd be driving the hearse from here over to the yard over there, and I'd be walking behind the hearse as if it was a funeral. As a young lad, you know, something.
And any of the remnants left here of the horse-drawn hearses, any of the plumes or any of those bits and pieces left?
Unfortunately not. No, when I went looking for them, I believe when everything was sold, the plumes, the harnesses, everything went with them.
And did you have a particular colour plume for an adult and a particular colour plume for in case a child passed away or a younger person?
No, in those days, like with the interior, the coffins, it was you could say blue for a boy and pink for a lady, but it's nearly all white now, the interiors.
So back in the days that were blue and pink?
Blue and pink, or you could have yellow or white, but it's blue for a man and pink for a lady.
And that was for an adult coffin?
Adult coffin, yeah. They would be what they're called side sheets.
And did you make your own coffins here?
No. They used to buy them in, and we're still buying them in.
And tell me this, did you do any of the preparation? Were they pitched or anything like that? Were they already when they came into you?
Well, the uncle used pitch them and used line them. We used to see him doing that, but as regards carpentry on them, they all come in ready-made. It's just that at those days he put in the black pitch, and then he would put the side sheets and things on the inside of it.
And do you remember the habits?
I do. We still have them, because now and again you might be asked for just in case. So we'd always have a man's habit or a lady's habit. And when the Friary were here, the Third Order were here, and we used to have brown habits. So we still have some of them. Not a lot now, not a lot, because everybody is doing their own clothing and things like that, but yes, we still have the habits.
And when did that change?
I suppose it changed when people decided to go back to houses or into funeral homes.
And you mentioned the Third Order, that was related to the friars here in Clonmel.
That's the friars before they left Clonmel last year. But the church is still open, it's called the House of Prayer now, instead of the Friary.
And the Third Order, were they lay people?
They were Third Order lay people. I could be a member of the Third Order, and like sometimes the Third Order like to be, when they pass away, they would like to have the Third Order habit, either a man's habit or a lady's habit. There's two of them.
And have you seen those in other counties?
I haven't actually, no, but I presume they're there. Like when we can get them from suppliers, I presume they're in other counties as well, you know, so, but whether there's, I suppose I say where there's a friary, there could be a Third Order. I don't know, I'm not too sure, to be honest.
And would most of your burials be in Clonmel, St. Patrick's, or would it be in the rural hinterland?
Well, mostly St. Patrick's, or they could be in, as you say, the hinterland, or they could be going to, for cremation, we go to Cork, crematorium in Cork, the Island Crematorium in Cork.
And in the past, were you out in the countryside much at all, or?
Well, some people in rural areas within 10, 15 miles of here, and we still go there, really, you know. So it all depends where the person died, where the burial ground is needed, or where they want to be buried.
And tell me this, did you ever notice any differences in, say, funeral practices where maybe a hearse might go a certain street or might stop in a certain place?
No, but if we're passing anywhere near a person's residence, or we might drive by the residence, out of the way to drive by the residence before we go to the cemetery, and we stop briefly.
Do you ever hear of any things like out in Fidder, there's a street called Barrack Street that a hearse won't go down?
That's right. Well, there's only that here now in Clonmel, but there is in Federt. Something to do with the army or something to do with the wars. I'm not too sure of that one. I'm not too well with the history on that one.
But there's nothing like that here in Clonmel?
No.
Would you notice even that people in Clonmel will turn off their lights or maybe close the door or when there's a hearse going by?
Some shops do, but more shops don't. To be honest, more shops don't. More often than not, they don't. There is one particular shop, all right, that do when they see if my son is walking in front of the hearse, he's away in front of me, they'd see him walking down, and next you'd see the lights going off and things like that.
And was that done in the past?
It was always done in the past. Always done in the past. Any time there was a funeral going, no matter what town or where you were going in town, everybody turned off lights. Everybody turned off the lights.
And would you see people stopping when the hearse would be coming towards them?
Sorry?
Would you see people stopping when the cortege should be coming towards them?
Yes, you would. Now, we have strip lights in the front of the hearse and the grill, which are very helpful, and people are very good. They always slow down, whereas prior to that, they just pass by and things, but when they see the lights and the hearse, they see the hearse coming, and they do respect it. They do slow down and pay the remains respect, we must say that.
Do you ever see anything different where maybe people might stop and maybe take a couple of steps with the cortege or with the family?
Well, what we do here in Clonmel is from the churches, both from St. Peter and Paul's and St. Mary's, they will walk down through the town, down to the end of the town here, and they get into the limousine then, or into their own cars at the end of the town, and down to the cemetery then. They walk down through the town.
And that still goes on?
And then they just, as I say, they get into their own cars, or even to get into the limousine if they want the limousine supplied, and just drive then straight down to St. Patrick's Cemetery.
And what was it like years ago?
Years ago, it used to walk the whole way to the cemetery, down St. Patrick's Cemetery. The whole way down.
What kind of distance is that?
God, I suppose you'd be talking, from here, 2 or 3 miles. To be 2 miles anyway from here, down.
Do you remember seeing that?
I do, yeah, I do.
And the coffin, the remains would be in the hearse?
In the hearse, yeah.
Do you ever remember years ago, people wearing black for the ear?
People wore the black for the ear, and you'd often see them too. You'd see them wearing the black diamond on their left shoulder and their sleeve as a mark of respect. And they probably wouldn't use the radio for a couple of weeks either. They'd close off their radios for, I believe, used to be a minimum of 6 weeks before they turn on the radio. The only time a radio would be turned on would be to listen to the news. But in regards to music, no music in the house for 6 months or 6 weeks.
And you remember the black diamond on the left hand?
I remember the black diamond on the sew onto the sleeve of their jacket or coat, and then they went for a black band, kind of an elasticated one. It saved getting the black diamond either sewn onto the garment, but in later years there was a sticker on it whereas you put a little drop of soap in the middle and you ironed it on. So if you wanted to take it off, you just pull it. See, so it wouldn't be sewn on.
And it was usually the men that wore the black diamond, is that correct?
Usually, oh yeah. I mean, or sometimes the ladies might wear, if they're wearing an overcoat, they'd have their black diamond as well. Yeah, they would. That was the real old tradition. And of course everyone was wearing the black as well. But that's kind of dying out now. Some people wear black, more people don't. Or
And did you cut the diamonds yourselves here?
no, they came made up. They came up to a cloth thing. They came made up. Yeah, they came made up.
And when did that stop in Clonmel?
God, I suppose that stopped in the 70s, I'd say. Early 70s. It would be the early 70s, I'd say, yeah.
Do you ever come across as well where people in a town, when someone would pass away, they'd close the shutters in a certain way so you know there was going to be a debt? Just some way of telling people there was a debt in that house. Any little signals or triggers like that?
Well, you see, before we used to have the crepe, black crepe, put on the door. But we don't do that now anymore. That's kind of a thing of the past. It's kind of a security thing, I suppose, really. You know, if someone saw something on the door and the family could be gone to a funeral, they could have unwelcome visitors, if you know what I mean. So we kind of don't do that anymore. Now, if the people want it, we do it. We still have them. But more often than not, people would request not to put the black crepes or put the cards on the doors.
And can you describe what a black crepe looks like to me?
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a cloth with a bow on it, black cloth with a bow on it, nicely decorated. Might even have one to show you if you want to see it at a later stage. But as I say, we used to put it on the door here as well in the funeral home. But then you'd have people coming in that wouldn't know the person that passed away, and sometimes out of curiosity. And we didn't like that. We heard it one time, we had the remains here after a very bad accident, and I was going out the hallway and we just said, Anthony, we're going in just to see what the person looks like after the accident. And I just said to him, you'll be very disappointed. I said, but if you have that in view at all, I said, I wouldn't mind. I said, if we didn't go in at all. But it's up to you. I said, if you want to go in, have a look at the person. I said, but you'll be totally disappointed.
They're all out there.
They're all out there. They're all out there. Yeah, they're all out there. But I think they were taken back with the answer I gave them. You know, I just didn't hold back on anything. It wasn't a nice thing to do. You know, respect is respect no matter what. And I thought that wasn't respectful for what they were saying. Now, the two ladies are very nice people, I know them, but curiosity got the better of them, I think. I think the disappointment got even the better of them again.
Can we just say, do you see funeral practices in Ireland that are different to, say, over in England, for example, or even other parts of the world, the way we bury so in a couple of days after the person has passed away?
Yeah, I think in the UK it takes a week or two, and I think it's because of space and where to get going with things. But lucky enough here, we don't delay too much, but we don't rush either. You know, we always tell people, take your time, there's no point in rushing. We'll go at your pace, I'll go at your pace. If you're happy with that, that's okay, but I said we won't rush or don't rush anything. As I say, dignity is high on our list here, and it's easier to do it right than to do it wrong. We just take every step and hurl as we come to it.
And you know, years ago sometimes, do you ever come across someone being buried the next day after passing away?
Yeah, we yes, and I have a personal experience of that. My own dad died on the 23rd of December and he was buried on the 24th of December. And that was many years ago, over 70 years ago, 60 years ago. Because at that time there was no funeral homes. It was from the house, and it was Christmas time. So it was kind of an overnight. He died on the 23rd of December and buried on the 24th of December. Whereas nowadays, if someone died on the 23rd of December, you could be talking the 28th or 29th of December before the burial, with people coming and going or people travelling from afar.
There were no burials on Christmas Day?
No burials on Christmas Day, although we did have remains, collection of remains, all right, Christmas Day, all right, but we had, I think, I can't remember, we did years and years ago, we had one burial on Christmas Day, all right.
But it'd be rare?
But it'd be very rare, very rare.
We buried my own father on Christmas Eve as well, so I know.
Really?
Yeah, I know
Right.
what you're on about. Were people buried on Sundays years ago?
There were, yeah, and still being buried on Sundays, here anyway. Other places they don't have burials on Sundays or funerals on Sundays. And unfortunately, sometimes there's no priests available on Sundays. That's kind of coming to a problem at the moment. Like, you know, the reverends, they're just not there, and those that are there are kind of, you know, and they're getting on in years. So in some places around now, they don't do funerals on a Sunday.
Simply due to the availability of
The availability of clergy.
And do you ever remember years ago, say a layperson would be brought to a grave, maybe say someone was a bit poorer, they mightn't have a priest at the funeral. Do you ever see that? A layperson saying a prayer, or maybe no priest there at all?
No, I always saw a priest there. Unless they're non-religious.
Did you, in the past, remember the families and the neighbours digging the graves?
In the country, yes, but not in the towns, because you have the corporations here now, which is now the county council. But in country graveyards and country towns, country places, you would have family digging graves, or if they didn't dig the grave, they might fill in the grave.
And do you remember seeing or hearing graves being filled in while the family were still at the grave?
Yes. Some places do it, more places don't. Here in Clonmel now in the cemeteries here, everybody will be gone, because the clay will be, when the grave is opened, the clay is taken away and then it's brought back again.
And in the country areas, some people might fill in?
Yeah, some of the family might lay a hand and just kind of put the clay back in again, but very rarely dig it. You'd have a professional grave digger to dig it, but they might assist in putting the clay back into the grave.
And that would be people there with shovels?
With shovels, yeah. The grave digger would have the shovels and they just help the grave digger.
And would they fill the whole grave in completely?
Oh yeah, they would, yeah, they would.
And would that be Catholic in Church of Ireland or both? Or?
It would be either or, yeah, either or.
Did you ever see them leaving down the shovels in the sign of a cross when they were done?
Yes. But nowadays we put grass matting over the grave.
But you did see people putting the shovels in the
I
cross?
used to see the people putting the shovels across when there be remains in the grave. They put the shovels across the grave, but they don't do that anymore.
But you did see it?
I did see it, yeah, I did.
Here was one thing I was going to ask you. Maybe the older people may have spoke about it. Did you ever come across women that would keen or cry at the graves years ago?
We get it all the time, really. You know, it's a hard thing to hold back a tear. And I always tell people, never hold back a tear, either at a wake or in a house. It's only harder on yourself. People will understand. So if you need to shed a tear, shed a tear. Don't be afraid of it. But to be always saying, oh, people be saying, the way I carried on. I said, even think what they like. Is if you want to share a tear, share a tear. It's up to you.
It's a complete human feeling to it.
Exactly. As you say, we're all human. And like, even for us as undertakers and funeral directors, it's a hard thing to do, especially if you know someone just close to you, that you know someone very, very well. And we have to be sure ourselves that we're strong enough for the people.
Do you ever have I'm sure you've seen many sad cases in your years.
Well, every death is sad, really. Every death is sad, be it female or male. And there's no one exception from the other. But as I say, every death is sad.
And tell me this, do you find a wake, there's a great comfort for people in a wake, or seeing our neighbours and our family come in and shake their hand?
Yes, people get great comfort from that. But in the houses, or even here in the funeral home, we'd have a remains in the coffin, but we have a nice net that we cover everybody. It saves people from touching remains, and people could have bacteria on their hands which you can't see, and they're spreading it, especially during COVID. But we've been doing it well before. We've been doing it for the last 40 years nearly, and it's nice and graceful. And especially here in the funeral home, with the garden here and the flowers outside, you could have wasps in around. You can't be going around hunting them out as well when there's people here. So we've no problem. And it's the same in houses. You've no problem watching remains from insects or things that with the net. There's no problem. But people say it's very graceful. People tell me that was the idea in the first place, to be graceful. But what we do here, if it's quiet and people are on their own here, we play light music, and it kind of breaks the ear a little bit, and it kind of takes away the tension. Now, people might ask us from time to time, can we play music in the funeral home, our own music? And I said, there's no problem, but I said, we can't do it in the church. We can play anything here, provided it's not too loud. I said, but yes, it breaks the monotony, it breaks the tension. It takes the tension out of the air when they just hear a bit of music. Or someone might say, oh, he used to love that music, or it's nice and peaceful, or it's things like that.
Do you remember years ago, in the wakes in the houses, people would always tell me that there was great crack, there was card games, there was this, that and the other, there was drink. Did you ever come across that at all in your time?
Well, you come across the drink anyway in the houses. Playing cards, no. People may probably stay up all night and things like that, and take it in turns for the wake and things like that. But I said there'll always be the liquid floating around the place, all right, I said, but not too much, just it's a celebration.
Celebration of life,
Celebration of life, yeah. Life of the person and things like that, and to the family. And people reminisce. As I always say to people, there's one thing you can't destroy. They always ask me, say, Anthony, what's that? I tell them, memories. Some people would have great memories of how the person was, or what they used to do, and what they used to do, or there's the chat way like that, and go back over the years, and it's nice to hear them going back over the years. So things like that.
And did you ever come across any particular customs where one man was telling me that they'd break the glass maybe at the grave, they'd leave the glass, or maybe they'd leave the bottle of, say there's a little bottle of whiskey, they'd leave the bottle of whiskey at the grave. Did you ever come across anything like that?
No, but not often, years ago, you might get someone with a grave digger and they'd leave a bottle of whiskey with them. When they're after filling in the grave again, they'd have their whiskey at the grave. the grave diggers or someone who would be helping them. You know, so it's kind of a traditional thing in some areas, but that's kind of all the traditional things seem to be fading out a bit.
And you remember that here in Tipperary?
Yeah.
Bottle of whiskey for the gravediggers.
The bottle of whiskey for the gravediggers.
Did you ever come across things where people would visit the graves at certain days or weeks after the burial would take place?
Well, sometimes maybe after a couple of hours when the grave is filled in, you might see them back down again to the cemetery. Or I know some people, I see it, especially a certain lady, she walks down every morning and every night to say a prayer to her husband. And it doesn't matter whether it's rain, hail or snow, you'll see her walking down, because I've offered her a lift home several times. And no, I'll do what I do, Anthony, that's it. That's the answer I used to get. You know.
She'd walk all the way to St. Pat's?
She'd walk all the way down to St. Patrick's Cemetery and all the way back, twice a day, in the morning and in the evening.
Do you think we're good at remembering our dead in Ireland?
I think so, yeah. I think we are. Yeah, we are. And you notice mostly when you're in churches on Sundays where people were sending requests for memorial masses and things that pray for the dead down through the years, or it could be a month's mind mass, or it could be 3 years mass, or whatever. So it's still going.
And even when you go to a graveyard now at night time, do you notice all the solar lights?
A lot of solar lights, yeah, there is. We used to keep them ourselves here. One time there was one lady, she was buying an awful lot of them. I said, God, Mary said, you must be going around to have a grave in the cemetery. No, she says, Anthony, every time I go down there, it's gone. So there's been stolen off the grave, so we gave up doing them then.
People would steal off the graves?
People would steal off the grave, the solar lights, when they came out first. But when I heard that, I said, there's no point in keeping them, knowing that it's going to be stolen and we're going to be selling them, which we would reckon as a false sale. So we gave them up.
It wasn't in you to sell them when you knew that?
No. We'd have it on our conscience knowing that they were going to be taken.
Did you ever see people going to the graves on All Souls Night or maybe on Christmas Eve and lighting a little candle for their loved ones?
On the Christmas, yeah, you would, yeah. You would see them at the Christmas, all right. You'd see them at Christmas time, all right, with the lights and that. They would have their usual Christmas wreath and things like that, and Christmas lights.
And the Christmas wreath would be a holly wreath?
Holly wreath, yeah.
Is that big in Clonmel?
Yeah, still going. Yeah, still going.
And what was the date? Did you have the graveyard mass here or the Patron day here?
Yes, you'd have a mass for the dead in the cemetery once a year. But years ago, when any funeral went, there's actually in St. Patrick's Cemetery, there's 2 churches. The one on the left is the Catholic church, and the one on the right is for the Protestant people. So no matter what funeral went in, the coffin was always taken out of the hearse, brought into one of the churches for the prayers to be said, back out again into the hearse and up to the grave. But whereas now we're going straight to the grave. So the prayers just be said inside in the church, and then just the burial rites then at the graveside. But that's not done anymore.
And that was for Catholic or Protestant?
That was for Catholic or Protestant, yeah. Which was a nice tradition, but at the time I suppose it would be a nice tradition.
And would people say the decade of the Rosary now at the grave, or would they say it in the church before they leave?
Well, they usually say a decade at the graveside anyway. The priest would say the decade of the Rosary. He would, yeah. As well as the prayers, like leaving the church and things like that. Where you'd have the blessing with the water and the incense before you leave the church.
would you notice much of a difference, say, maybe apart from the prayers in, say, Church of Ireland burial and a Catholic burial, or are the differences at all? Or?
There's a slight difference, not much. Not much. Not much. Prayers are something similar as well.
And you know, you were telling me earlier on, you were saying you'd stop off at, say, the house of the person that may have deceased. Was that done years ago in your grandpa, in the olden days? Do you know?
I presume it would be. Well, you see, it'd be going from the house. In those days, the remains would be going from the house anyway. So, theirs may not go on its way to the cemetery. Whereas now, if we're asked to go out for a way, well, we will facilitate people. It's a small thing, you know. But years ago, they may not go back the second time to the house because the remains barely have to come from the house to the church.
And you know, now there's cremations. A lot of people are going for cremations compared to in the past. How are they different at all? How?
Well, everything's the same when you get to the crematorium, except it goes on a belt. It goes behind either a curtain or a screen. And people go to crematoriums thinking they're going to see the cremation taking place, which, as you know, they don't see it taking place. And we just get the ashes back 2 or 3 days later. But in regards in the crematoriums, everything's the same, your prayer's the same, you can have whatever music you want within reason and things like that. And it's the same with at the cemeteries. If people want to play music, it's out, it's finished, they can play it in the cemetery, but not in the church. Has to be hymns. But yeah, they're basically the same.
And would there be a wall in the graveyard, St. Patrick's, where there might be a little plaque?
There is. The columbarium, they call it. Yeah, there is. Yeah, where you can put the ashes. But there's an awful lot of people against it because they don't think it's safe. People were saying to me, when I mentioned it to them and said no, and we won't use that, he said, if we had around the family, they'd say to me, I said, what do you mean around the family? Well, I listened to a person one day, and then I discovered he was an ex-guard, not from Clonmel. And he said to me, look, if there's around the family, or a disagreement, as the way he put it as well, it's easy to open a columbarium. But he said, for the ashes. But he says, if they're buried, he says, let's go to court to be exhumed. Or someone will see them digging. But the columbarium, he says, and I believe they were broken into up the country, I believe, a couple of times, I believe. You know, so.
Something you'd never consider?
I wouldn't consider it myself anyway, no, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't, being honest about it.
Do you see any kind of other traditions where people might plant a tree instead of a headstone or something like that? Do you ever see anything slightly different?
No, as a matter of fact, they removed the trees from the cemeteries because what was happening was that the trees and the roots were growing into graves and things like that, and they were knocking headstones and things like that. So it's very seldom you see anything planted. You might see some nice flowers, all right, maybe in a corner of a grave, but no trees. Don't plant the trees.
And do you remember in the past, you have, say, some poor old creators or some poor old family, they might have had money, and I saw it in my own case, where the people would have to make up a concrete headstone themselves, the best they could afford. Do you ever see where people made up their own headstones in the past?
No, I haven't seen that. Never come across that. The only thing we would have a temporary grave marker with the wooden cross, all right, with the plaque on it. But other than that, no, because I think in the cemetery here you'd have to apply for planning permission to put it up anyway, so you can't do it on a personal basis or put up a headstone personally.
And would you ever see, was there a kind of a pattern, or was there particular days when someone would put up a headstone after, say, someone passed away? Was there a waiting period at all?
Usually 6 months. Well, it all depends on the ground. Whereas the ground where the soil gets firmer to put down foundations and things like that, but it's usually 6 to 12 months. Or some people might wait for the first anniversary, have it done for the first anniversary or something like that.
How did COVID affect everything you do?
It was hard. And it was harder on the families, especially going into the church. Even it was hard for the priest even, because you go into the church with remains, maybe 2 of us, a priest, and an empty church. And it wasn't easy, you know. And then, as some churches, they allowed in a certain amount of people. And we usually at the back of the church, and we were stopping people from going in. And in the end, we had to tell them to close the sacristan to close the doors, because they were blaming us for not leaving them in. But it was hard, and it was hard on the people as well. Now, it was hard on ourselves as well, because we had to fully make sure what we were dealing with. And we had to dress accordingly. Luckily enough, we didn't have too many COVID cases, bad COVID cases. We had 2 or 3, I'd say, over the period of time. But that was it. But we were prepared. We had special equipment to do the job for us. We had a special inner lining of the coffin that we have in, that we used to kind of seal it, the remains inside and the sealer. But people say to us, just put them into a bag. We didn't do that. We dressed everyone in the normal way. We treated everybody with respect, even though they had bad COVID or whatever, but we were geared out, fully gloves, face masks, the lot. But we always made sure everybody was dressed properly before we do the rest of the work that we were going to do. Because we had, not alone had we to protect ourselves, we had to protect other people as well.
And you purposely made a particular type of lining for the coffins, did you?
Yes, we bought a machine for it. Prior to the COVID, we had it already, prior to the COVID. It's like an inner lining, like a lead lining, but it was flexible, something like tin foil, but twice as thick. And then we would seal the person inside it, get all the air out of it, and seal the person, and everything would be perfect then.
That was hard on ye.
It was, and we had to watch every step. And of course, we had sanitizers. We sanitize everywhere, before and after. Even in the funeral home here, before people come in, we fogged it with fogging machines. We still have them. We still use them. And every time there's someone here, at night time, when they're gone, we take out the fogging machine, so that we close the doors, then everything stays in here and kills any bugs or whatever is going. We still do it. We still do it, because you never know nowadays. And it's the same with our cars, if we do the same in the cars as well. Especially at funerals, if there's people have, we say, colds or flus or coughs or whatever, we have the fogging machines. And it's just to protect ourselves and protect everybody.
And you didn't use those fogging machines prior to COVID?
No, we didn't, because it wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary, you know. But it seems it's like a blow. It's like as if it's a fog. We can see the fog, and it sticks to everything. But it's perfect. It doesn't do you any harm.
Is there anything else that came out of COVID that has changed since before COVID?
No, I don't think so. No, we're kind of back to normal again, I think. Back to normal again. But the COVID days, they weren't easy. They weren't easy, and that's all we could do. So.
You were trying to comfort families as well.
Trying to comfort families as well and explain to them properly. No, I must say, anyone that we dealt with, they were very, very understanding, and they just thanked us for the way we done it, the way we done things, and no matter what funeral or remains we'd always be very fussy of what happens and how it's done, the way it's carried out.
And do you remember how people try to offer their condolences, or what did people do different? Did they line the streets when the hearse would go by, or?
Yeah, but even here in the funeral home, we had signs up all over, no handshaking. And of course we had the sanitizer machines there for the hands and things like that. But if we saw someone shaking hands, we'd ask them not to. We were kind of very strict, and we'd be here watching it all the time. I might be standing at the door, and we might tell the people, no handshaking, please, just the nod or a wave, just to acknowledge and shake hands, in other words, but no shaking hands during the COVID.
Say for example, back to COVID, but during COVID, did you find people found it hard to mourn, or how did they find that?
Well, you see, it was hard in families because an awful lot of people couldn't go to funerals, even though it was their relations and things, they just couldn't go. They probably saw it on the television, or not the television, going out from the church on the air, probably watched it that way. An awful lot of people watched it that way and still do. But other than that, if they shake hands outside during COVID, there's nothing we could do about that, but we were strict in here. It was on our premises, we just watched everything. Just keep an eye on it. As I say, we had signs all over the place, no handshaking under any circumstances. And people did read them, and people did go abide by what we asked them to do. They were very good in that sense.
Did you find that the webcams were a great opportunity for people to be part of the funeral?
I couldn't remember there a few minutes ago. There's people watching it on the webcam. They were watching it rather than going to the funeral. When they couldn't go to the funeral, but they saw it on the webcam and things like that. And even on radio, sometimes went out over radio as well. But the webcams were good, so. And they're still good. They're still good, because no matter where you are in the world, if you want to tune in, you can see it.
Yeah, that was a good thing that came out of it, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was.
You think back now, you can't even fathom what was going on. So many unknowns.
See, this is it. That's true.
We didn't know. I noticed behind you that you've got a lovely big bunch of flowers, and you've got the candles and the crucifix. Did you ever come across things being told, more folklore and superstition now, that you wouldn't have certain colour flowers inside the funeral home or anything like that?
No. As a matter of fact, there's a picture behind me. It's the Bible, which was hand painted. That's done by hand. And there's not done at the other side, but this one here is the Bible, which we have where the priest stand. And he always refers to the Bible behind me. He's probably people be saying, where's the Bible behind me? So people have to be asked. I said to him, it's the new one. It's the new painting that we have, hand painted Bible, to a friend of mine, a relation of mine actually, who was involved with Stag. They're the people that do the paintings and things like that. And this man over here, you see a photograph. That's a pencil drawing of my grandfather.
And your grandfather was?
My grandfather was William Fennessy, the man that started the business.
Is it important to you to have these little pieces of history around the funeral home.
It is. This is only a recent one that I got done, and the other one at the far side is St. Patrick's Well. And the reason why I got it done from the hand painting over there for St. Patrick's Well is my grandmother was actually from Marleyfield, where St. Patrick's Well is, and that's the connection we have with it. And there's another painting, new one that we got in the hallway coming in, and that's the connection that I have with the paintings and why they're here. They're representing the family as to where they originated from.
And are you proud to keep the tradition going?
Very proud. Very proud. My son David is in the business, very good with it as well.
And he will carry on after you?
He carries on after me. But my daughter, she's an embalmer as well. She's actually a school teacher as well. But she does embalming as well at times. But music is our big things for teaching. So if we were stuck, I had no one to do the embalming for us, because we built, years ago, we built up a small theatre called the Embalming Room. We've all the equipment there, and she used to go in there and practice and do what she had to do. But
and before there was embalming, there were women, was it, mostly that did the job?
mostly nurses.
Nurses.
Mostly nurses, yeah.
Did you call it to lay out the corpse?
The corpse, laying out the corpse, yeah. That's it.
And that would be a nurse?
That would be a nurse or a layperson, or, maybe a member of the family or something like that. Or not an easy thing to do, but sure.
Has to be done?
Had to be done. Yeah, had to be done.
And do you ever think sometimes people would ask you about your profession? Does it ever, do you ever say, God, I wish it was at something else?
From myself?
Yeah.
Not really, no. Not really. Before I came in here, I was in drapery all my life. And no, just I was happy to come in here. And at the time, in '88, when I was working with Ernest and Company, I could see big changes, and I just got out at the right time and kind of started here at the wrong time, if you know what I mean. Before it went right, it wasn't easy for a couple of months. It wasn't easy because like when I started the chauffeur business, I suppose once a salesman, always a salesman. I went around to different companies and I told them what I was starting off, because when I used to go travelling for errands abroad, I'd fly into an airport and there'd be a chauffeur there to pick me up and bring me to a factory or to a hotel. So I saw that here. So that's how I started that end of it. So no, I like doing what I do. People say to me, Anthony, when are you retired? I always tell them when I can't get up. I said, I just have to keep going. I sit back a little bit, but I said, not too much. But for the first 18 to 20 years I was here, it was 24/7. I mean, didn't take holidays, didn't take anything, so just to keep things going properly.
You won't stop until you have to stop?
I won't stop till I have to stop. So, and as well as I like meeting people. Now sometimes when I'm in homes, I make a little fun just to take the things out of it. They always joke me. People say, Anthony, will you have a cup of tea before you go home? And I always say, no thanks, but you can give me the tea bag and I can have it when I go home. And they start laughing, then they forget everything. Then they say, that's my way of breaking the ice for them. And they just said, I said, sorry for having the laughter. I said, you have to have a laughter as well as a cry. So that's basically it.
It's been lovely talking to you, Anthony. Thanks for your time.
That's all. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. You have to have a laugh as well as a cry.
You have to have a laugh as well as a cry. You have indeed. You have to make things light-hearted. Light-hearted. if you can do it properly, so. And it takes the attention of people as well. If you make a little joke, I had another joke there about 3 months ago. A lady asked me, she says to me, "Oh, Anthony, I want to get his watch. Will you take off his watch?" "I will," I said. "I'll clock him out now," I said. And again, the family started roaring and laughing to hear what he said. He took off the watch and he said he was clocking out. Small little things like that, so.
Lovely. We'll clock out now.